You think you control your choices, but under pressure, your will is a fragile toy. Loyalty is a trap, resistance is weakness, and submission decides who survives. Pressure is not a circumstance. It is a scalpel. It exposes weakness, fractures conviction, and reveals who you really are when the world closes in. Most believe themselves resilient because they have endured mild inconvenience. That is the illusion. True pressure is surgical, unrelenting, and designed to test every fiber of your autonomy. Under it, your will bend or break. To survive, you must first shift the lens through which you perceive stress. You have been trained to see pressure as temporary, as something to fight or escape. This is naive. Pressure is a magnifier. It does not attack your circumstances. It attacks your essence. It reveals the cracks in your moral armor, your loyalties, your imagined self-control. Your mind, which prides itself on freedom, will betray you the moment it believes obedience is the path of least resistance. Consider the battlefield of human behavior. Pressure is the general, indifferent to your ethics, your pride, your logic. It positions forces around you, deadlines, authority, fear, expectation, survival instincts. These forces do not negotiate. They command, and when they strike, every so-called choice you cling to is tested. The question is not if you will obey, it is whether you will recognize the obedience forming within before it consumes you. This chapter forces a mental realignment. You will begin to see the world not as a stage for virtue or comfort, but as a crucible, where only precise adaptation ensures survival. Every instinct you believe is autonomous is, in truth, conditioned by circumstance. Under extreme pressure, what you call free will is little more than a series of conditioned responses, waiting to be flipped. Imagine a man cornered by circumstance, a relentless superior, a ticking clock, a threat that cannot be reasoned with. He believes resistance is moral, courage is strength. Yet within hours, compliance becomes inevitable. He justifies it to himself as strategic, necessary, even virtuous. But it is not. It is survival encoded into action by external forces. The illusion of control is shattered, leaving only raw obedience. The purpose of this lens shift is twofold. First, to destabilize your current self-image. Your belief that willpower alone can protect you is a trap. Second, to prepare your mind for the mechanics of compliance to follow. You must begin to accept the idea that under pressure, morality is optional, resistance is weakness, and adaptation is the only currency of survival. Those who fail to internalize this are doomed to collapse when the true stress arrives. Here you learn to read pressure as a predator reads scent, to anticipate, to detect vulnerability, to exploit. You learn to see every trigger, every force not as an obstacle, but as a lever that can shape behavior, your own or another's. This is not philosophy. It is reconnaissance of the human psyche under assault. If you leave this chapter clinging to the comforting narrative of willpower conquers all, you will fail. Pressure does not negotiate, and neither should you. Your survival depends on seeing it as it truly is, the instrument that reveals obedience, and the mirror that exposes the fragility of the self you cling to. Only by acknowledging this can you begin to master the switch that bends minds, including your own. Obedience is not taught, it is triggered. Buried deep within the human mind lies a set of levers, wires, and silent switches that govern behavior when pressure strikes. These switches are invisible to the untrained eye, yet they dominate every decision, every hesitation, every free choice. You are not as autonomous as you believe. Under extreme pressure, the mechanics of compliance activate automatically, bending will without negotiation. The core of compliance is simple: survival over principle. The brain, ever the strategist, calculates cost versus benefit in milliseconds. When the threat exceeds your capacity to resist, resistance is no longer viable. You submit, not because you have chosen, but because every internal mechanism prioritizes preservation. Pride, morality, loyalty, all secondary to the instinct to endure. Those who claim their submission is voluntary are deceiving themselves. It is the system, not their conscience, that decides. This mechanism is universal. It exists in every human, but it manifests differently depending on history, temperament, and circumstance. Some collapse visibly, quivering under authority, fear, or expectation. Others adapt silently, almost invisibly, masking the activation of compliance behind reasoned arguments, rationalization, and performance. In both cases, the same psychological wires have been pulled. The difference lies in awareness. Some detect it, some do not. Most do not. To understand compliance, you must see it as a chain reaction. Pressure strikes the mind, triggering a cascade stress hormone spike. Fear signals dominate. Decision-making narrows to immediate. Survival and ethical or ideological. Filters bypass entirely. Autonomy, long celebrated as the mark of human identity, is sidelined. You do not resist because resistance is an illusion. You obey because every internal system has already decided it is necessary. Recognition of this mechanism is critical, not for comfort, but for control. Awareness allows you to anticipate when compliance will activate, to observe it in others, and eventually to manipulate it. Every human mind can be flipped under the right conditions. Authority, fear, expectation, social proof, or repeated exposure to stress can prime these switches. Those who understand the triggers gain leverage over those who remain naive, seeing themselves as masters of choice. Consider the soldier on a battlefield, the prisoner under interrogation, the subordinate under a relentless superior. In each scenario, the external forces are different, but the internal mechanism is identical. The mind prioritizes survival through submission. The illusions of morality, principle, and identity dissolve. Obedience is not moral, it is functional. The weak see it as shameful. The strategist sees it as data. Compliance is neither virtue nor vice. It is inevitability. The danger lies not in external pressure alone, but in your failure to anticipate your own compliance. Most men believe they are immune. They are not. You will bend, rationalize, and perform obedience while imagining you are acting freely. Understanding this is not optional. It is preparation. Once you recognize the mechanics at play, you can begin to control them, shaping your own behavior, exploiting the behavior of others, and aligning survival with precision. This chapter has exposed the architecture beneath obedience, the hidden circuitry of fear, instinct, and cognitive prioritization. It has stripped away illusions of autonomy and moral fortitude, revealing the truth. Compliance is predictable, universal, and manipulable. Those who ignore it will be its victim. Those who master it will bend themselves and others to the will of circumstance, converting inevitability into strategy. Obedience is a machine. Understanding the gears, levers, and triggers is the first step toward wielding it. Human behavior under pressure is not random. It follows patterns, predictable archetypes, roles as old as civilization itself. To navigate compliance, or to wield it, you must recognize these roles. Ignorance is lethal. Understanding them allows you to anticipate reactions, manipulate outcomes, and exploit obedience with precision. The first archetype is the pawn, weak, reactive, and malleable. The pawn's entire existence is dictated by external forces. Under pressure, they collapse almost instantly. Performing obedience without reflection, they rationalize compliance as necessary or right, but it is nothing more than instinctual survival. In groups, pawns are the most dangerous, not to themselves, but to those who rely on them. Their mind is a conduit for external agendas. They obey blindly, often sabotaging those who fail to anticipate their mechanical reactions. Next is the predator. Unlike the pawn, the predator thrives under pressure, not as a victim, but as an orchestrator. They recognize the switches in others' minds and exploit them ruthlessly. They are the manipulators, the strategists, the ones who bend obedience to their will. Pressure amplifies their control, revealing the cracks in others while sharpening their own focus. The predator never confuses morality with weakness. Compliance is a tool, a weapon, a lever to achieve dominance. The third archetype is the silent betrayer. Often invisible, this figure obeys outwardly but internally calculates divergence, subversion and self-interest. They are the most insidious because they operate under the guise of loyalty, only revealing true intentions when it serves survival or advantage. Pressure exposes them, but not until it is too late for others to counteract. The silent betrayer is a living reminder that compliance is rarely absolute. It can be faked, deferred, and weaponized. Then there is the anchor. Anchors appear steadfast, principled, unwavering. They resist pressure longer than most, giving the illusion of moral fortitude. Yet even they possess switches. Under extreme duress, their resistance fractures in predictable ways. Their value is in the perception they create. Their temporary stability can be used to manipulate, misdirect, or inspire false confidence. Recognize anchors for what they are: temporary stabilizers, not ultimate survivors. Finally, the manipulator of self, rare, disciplined, and fully aware. This archetype understands the internal circuitry of obedience within themselves. They preemptively rewire responses, bending will without losing purpose. They are neither pawn nor predator in the traditional sense. They operate as architects of survival, converting inevitability into controlled action. Their strength lies in anticipation. They exploit pressure rather than succumb to it. Understanding these archetypes is essential because pressure does not create new behaviors. It amplifies existing ones. Each human falls into patterns, predictable under duress, and the archetype reveals both their vulnerabilities and their potential utility. Recognition allows strategic alignment. You can avoid being a pawn, manipulate the silent betrayer, learn from the predator, and emulate the manipulator of self. Every interaction under extreme pressure becomes a calculation of archetypes, a battlefield of instinct and strategy. Consider social experiments, military history, and corporate warfare. Every collapse, every betrayal, every act of obedience fits into these archetypal roles. No behavior is accidental. Pawns falter, predators dominate, silent betrayers sabotage, anchors mislead, manipulators of self survive. Recognizing these patterns is not moral, it is operational. Survival demands it. Mastery of these archetypes is mastery over human behavior itself. The lesson of this chapter is stark. The human mind is a machine of predictable roles. Pressure reveals the design. Identify the patterns, exploit the weaknesses, anticipate the actions. Those who fail to recognize archetypes will be manipulated or destroyed. Those who master them gain control over both themselves and the world around them. Obedience is not abstract. It wears faces. It assumes forms. Understanding these forms is the first step to commanding, surviving, and reshaping the forces around you. Surrender is not dramatic. It is precise, inevitable, and methodical. Under extreme pressure, humans do not simply give in. They follow a predictable descent: resistance, hesitation, rationalization, then submission. History, war, and human behavior repeatedly demonstrate the anatomy of this collapse. Understanding it is not optional. It is survival intelligence. The process begins with fracture. The mind, confronted with relentless stress, fear, authority, scarcity, experiences micro-cracks. Moral certainty shatters first. Belief in personal invulnerability erodes. Small compromises occur unnoticed. A word softened, a principle bent. These fractures seem inconsequential at first, but they accumulate. Each concession is a rehearsal, a mental calibration for larger obedience. By the time external pressure escalates, the mind has already been primed for surrender. Next is rationalization. Humans cannot submit without justification. The mind seeks alignment between behavior and identity, crafting narratives that conceal weakness as strategy. I am doing this to protect myself. This is necessary. I am staying loyal. All lie beneath the surface of surrender. Rationalization is the camouflage of compliance. It masks fear, desperation, and instinct as conscious choice. In reality, the machinery of obedience has already begun to operate. Then comes alignment. The individual begins to act in accordance with external demands. Autonomy is sidelined. Every act of cooperation, every nod, Every adherence to orders becomes a rehearsal for full submission. This stage is subtle but critical. Surrender is no longer a single event. It is a habit, a rhythm, a rewiring of thought. Pressure has not only coerced action, it has reshaped identity. The mind begins to anticipate the commands it will face, adjusting behavior preemptively. History offers countless examples. Soldiers captured in battle, prisoners of regimes, citizens under tyrannies. They all follow this anatomy. First fracture, then rationalization, then alignment. Resistance fades into memory. Ideals are replaced with obedience. Loyalty is weaponized by authority, not earned. Morality becomes a relic. Those who survive are those who adapt quickly. Those who cling to principle perish slowly. There is no heroism here, only the arithmetic of survival. Human nature ensures that surrender is rarely dramatic. It is a slow, almost invisible erosion of will. The most dangerous stage is concealed obedience. When submission is hidden, performed with subtlety, unnoticed by observers, the individual becomes an instrument of compliance without realizing it. Pressure does not need to shout to conquer. It whispers, nudges, and gradually enslaves the mind. Understanding the anatomy of surrender is critical for strategy. You must recognize these stages in yourself and others: fracture, rationalization, alignment, concealed obedience. Every human under pressure follows them. Those who anticipate these stages can manipulate outcomes, accelerating obedience in others, or preemptively rewiring themselves to survive without being broken externally. Those who fail are devoured by the same mechanism that enslaves the naive. Finally, surrender is predictable, exploitable, and reversible, but only if understood. It is a biological, psychological, and social inevitability, not a moral failing. Those who acknowledge this can operate above the chaos. Those who deny it are blind, bound by delusion. Obedience is not a choice. It is a function of circumstance, exposure, and timing. Master the anatomy, and you control the tempo of surrender. Ignore it, and you are its victim. Pressure does not negotiate. Morality does not intervene, and instinct always prioritizes survival. Recognize surrender for what it is: a mechanism, a pathway, a predictable sequence. Only through this understanding can you anticipate compliance, manipulate it in others, and align yourself to endure without being consumed. Compliance is not a flaw. It is a system, and like any system, it can be controlled, manipulated, and weaponized. Tactical will rewiring is the art of bending obedience to your own design, converting instinctive submission into deliberate, precise behavior. The naive believe they can resist pressure by brute force of will. The strategist knows that will is a circuit to be rerouted, a switch to be flipped. The first step is self-calibration. Before you can manipulate obedience in others, you must understand the switches within yourself. Identify the triggers that bend your mind: fear of loss, social expectation, authority, threat of pain or embarrassment. Pressure exploits these points effortlessly, converting instinct into obedience. By recognizing them, you take the first step toward control, turning inevitability into instrumentality. You do not resist these triggers blindly. You preemptively redirect them. Next is behavioral alignment. Rewiring is not abstract thought. It is action. You begin performing obedience deliberately, under controlled circumstances, to condition your mind to accept compliance as functional rather than humiliating. Small acts, repeated with precision, create neural pathways that make submission automatic under pressure, yet guided by strategy. You are no longer reactive. You are architecting your own obedience, converting what would be weakness into a tool for survival and leverage. The third step is trigger manipulation. Just as a predator learns which pressure points control prey, you must learn the cues that bend minds, yours and others. Authority, expectation, social pressure, and timing are levers. Apply them with precision. Activate compliance when desired. Delay it when advantageous, and neutralize it in moments of risk. Obedience becomes predictable, controllable, a resource rather than a threat. Next comes repetition under simulation. Real pressure will always exceed expectation. but rehearsal strengthens the switch. Simulate scenarios, confrontation, scrutiny, scarcity, threat. Execute controlled compliance repeatedly, observing how instinct bends and rationalization rationalizes. Each rehearsal builds resilience, each repetition expands control. The mind begins to anticipate submission, but on your terms. Obedience becomes a mechanism. You command rather than a fate imposed. Then there is identity integration. Tactical rewiring is meaningless without full absorption into self-concept. Compliance must feel natural, effortless, and rational, even under extreme duress. The old self, the ego that resisted, protested, or moralized, must be subordinated to strategy. Will is no longer a passive strength. It is an instrument calibrated for survival and dominance. Resistance is optional, but never necessary. Obedience becomes a conscious extension of your strategic self. Finally, apply exploitation outward. The principles that bend your mind can bend others. Recognize archetypes, identify triggers, and apply calibrated pressure. Every human mind has levers, switches, and predictable collapse points. Use them. The same precision that rewires your will into deliberate obedience can engineer compliance in colleagues, adversaries, or subordinates. Tactical rewiring is not a private exercise. It is the architecture of influence under extreme conditions. This is not comfort. It is not virtue. It is power encoded into behavior. Tactical will rewiring transforms inevitability into strategy, vulnerability into leverage, instinct into instrument. The mind that understands these principles can endure, manipulate, and dominate where others crumble. Those who ignore them surrender passively. Those who master them bend reality itself. Pressure is inevitable. Submission is inevitable. But through tactical rewiring, you become the conductor of the system rather than its victim. Obedience stops being an accident. It becomes a tool, precise, controlled, and mercilessly effective. No rewiring is complete without destruction. The compliant mind cannot coexist with the identity you currently protect. What you call self is a liability, an accumulation of moral habits, emotional reflexes, and false narratives about autonomy. Under extreme pressure, this identity collapses anyway. The difference now is intention. You will not wait to be broken. You will execute the death yourself. The old self believes resistance is noble. It believes dignity lies in defiance, that obedience is humiliation. This is sentimental weakness. That identity was designed for comfort, not survival. It assumes fair conditions, ethical opponents, and predictable consequences. None of those exist under real pressure. The moment conditions turn hostile, that self becomes brittle, clinging to ideals while the environment rewrites the rules. Identity death begins with detachment. You sever emotional loyalty to your former beliefs, fairness, consistency, moral clarity. These were conveniences, not truths. You stop asking what feels right and start asking what functions. The ego protests at this stage. It frames surrender as loss, adaptation as betrayal. Ignore it. The ego is a relic of safety. Under pressure, it is noise. Next comes neutralization of moral reflexes. Morality under stress is a trap. It delays action, fractures clarity, and creates hesitation. You do not erase morality. You subordinate it. It becomes conditional, tactical, situational. This is not corruption. It is alignment with reality. History favors those who adapt faster than their conscience can object. The old self cannot accept this. That is why it must die. Then comes identity compression. You reduce yourself to function. Strip away narrative, personality, reputation. What remains is a tool, perception, calculation, execution. You stop seeing yourself as a character in a story and start operating as a unit in a system. Pressure no longer attacks you. It interfaces with a mechanism. This is where most men fail. They cling to being someone instead of becoming effective. At this stage, obedience stops feeling like submission. It feels like movement, action without internal debate. The mind no longer resists pressure. It flows through it. Orders are not insults. Constraints are not humiliations. They are inputs. You respond with precision, not emotion. The old self would have called this dehumanization. That judgment is irrelevant. Survival does not require self-expression. Finally comes replacement. You do not exist without identity, you replace it. The new identity is engineered, not inherited. It is built around adaptability, silence, calibration. This self does not need to be seen as strong. It needs to endure, influence, and persist. Loyalty is conditional. Resistance is strategic. Obedience is deliberate. The compliance switch is no longer a threat. It is embedded. This death is permanent. You cannot return to innocence once you see how fragile identity truly is. That is the cost. Those who refuse this death remain vulnerable forever, pretending strength while pressure waits patiently. Those who accept it become something colder, quieter, and far more dangerous. The old self wanted meaning. The new self wants control. Under extreme pressure, only one survives. You have now seen the machinery of obedience, the anatomy of surrender, and the rewiring necessary to survive extreme pressure. But understanding alone is not mastery. Awareness without action is death disguised as preparation. Every human is tested. Only a few endure. The difference is ruthless execution. The compliance switch is not a theory. It is a weapon. Those who fail to wield it will be consumed. Pressure does not forgive. It does not pause for moral reflection or sentimental hesitation. The world does not care about your principles, your loyalty, or your courage. These are luxuries for the untested. Survival, influence, and sovereignty belong only to those who internalize the inevitability of obedience, who strip their identity to the bone, who bend instinct into instrument. Hesitation is fatal. Pride is slower than necessity. You stand at a crossroads, collapse or mastery. Collapse is passive. It is the path of those who cling to the old self, who hope morality will shield them, who misread obedience as weakness. They rationalize their failures, mask their panic, and wait for circumstance to decide. They obey too late, fracture too easily, and surrender without strategy. They become instruments of others' will, their potential extinguished before it is realized. Mastery, on the other hand, is active. It is the deliberate engineering of will, the ruthless alignment of self with circumstance, the preemptive adoption of obedience as a tool rather than a threat. You no longer ask whether you will bend. You decide how, when, and why. You manipulate the compliance of others as effortlessly as your own. You are the strategist, the conductor, the predator of pressure itself. Weakness no longer guides your decisions. Precision does. Sovereignty is more than survival. It is the ability to extract advantage from inevitability, to anticipate collapse in others, to execute calculated obedience while bending outcomes to your design. Every human around you carries switches, triggers, and archetypes. You see them, you exploit them. You do not allow instinct to dictate action. You direct it. This is not morality. This is strategy. This is power encoded in behavior. Remember, the old self cannot survive. Resistance without calibration is naive. Pride untempered by tactical submission is a liability. The world will exploit these traits mercilessly. Only by completing the death of the old self and mastering the switch that governs obedience can you operate beyond vulnerability. Compliance becomes a weapon, identity a tool, pressure a predictable opponent rather than a hidden enemy. Final warning, there is no second chance. Pressure is patient. It waits for hesitation, for disbelief, for clinging to obsolete identity. It will exploit every micro-crack in your mind. Those who hesitate, who fail to internalize the inevitability of obedience, will collapse quietly, painfully, predictably. Those who act, who rewire, who shed, survive, and dominate. You are not here to feel empowered. You are not here to be comforted. You are here to become functional, effective, dangerous. Obedience is not shame, it is control. Identity death is not loss, it is liberation. Compliance is not surrender, it is sovereignty. The choice is final, irreversible, and merciless. Adapt or be broken. The world does not wait. Pressure does not forgive. Survival favors those who wield the compliance switch.